Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Brian Tibbetts.
So this one night, I'm hanging out with my friend Joe at his apartment in Eugene. It's about 2, 3 in the morning, and it's time for me to go home. And for this story to work right, you have to picture me at 18 years old. 135 pounds, 28-inch waisted white Levi's that left almost nothing to the imagination. Gray cowboy boots, some random t-shirt, and a long, flowing mohair overcoat. To go with my giant frullet, which, for those of you who don't know, is an afro mullet thing. So yeah, it was the late 80s. So it's time for me to go home, and I'm walking home from his place, and it's January or February, and it's raining, but it's that Oregon rain, that like light pissing mist that you're just kind of walking through like you're in a cloud on top of a mountain someplace way better than Eugene in February. And I got like an 18, 19 block walk to go home, and I'm wearing a coat that provides no insulation, and again, tight white Levi's and a t-shirt, and it's cold out, and 18 blocks at that age seemed like a really long way. And so I was pretty miserable, and I'm maybe 2 or 3 blocks from his house, and the streets are deserted. Again, it's between 2 and 3 in the morning, and I'm walking along, and this car comes up the road and slows down as it comes alongside of me, almost to a complete stop. And I look over, and the windows are tinted, so I can't see who the hell's in the car, and I don't know anybody who drives a 280Z. And for those of you who are too young to know what a 280Z is, imagine like a Mazda Miata, but like if like somebody who made meth or something owned one, that's like what a 280Z is. And the car takes off, continues to go up the road, and I'm like, whatever. And I look back, and it goes around the block behind me, and I just keep on walking. And I get up to the corner, and the same fucking car pulls up in front of me and stops, and the window comes down, and there's this guy in there, and it looks kind of like Freddie Mercury, but balding, but not really willing to be balding. You know what I mean? And he asked me if I want to ride. And again, it's 18, 19 blocks back to my apartment, my first apartment, my first roommate, and all that cool shit. And so I say yes. I'll fucking walk another 18 blocks. So I get in the car with the guy, and I tell him where I live, and we take off down the road. And we're making chit-chat like strangers do when they don't know each other, and they're in a car at 2:30 in the morning in Eugene. And he's asking me what I was doing that night. I'm like, why am I walking home at 2:30 in the morning, 3 or whatever? And I tell him I'm hanging out playing cards or whatever with my friend Joe, and I ask him, be polite, I ask him what he was doing that night. And he tells me he was hanging out at this bar. Now, I knew the bar because it had been the only bar I'd ever been in up until that point. And I had this other friend, Ryan, and Ryan, kind of as a contrast to my description at 18 years old, Ryan at 17 dressed and looked every bit the part of a slightly obese George Michael. So like down to the white leather jacket with the fringe and the tight blue Levi's and the cowboy boots, of course. And one night, a few months before the night in question, Ryan had asked me if I wanted to go to a bar. And it would be in about 3 o'clock in the morning. We're hanging out at some 24-hour coffee shop, and I'd never been to a bar before. I said, sure. And he's like, well, it's a gay bar. And I didn't know that, obviously. But I knew Ryan. And so I told him I pretty much assumed that, even though it was complete bullshit. And then I'm fine with it. He's like, oh, all right. So we head off to this gay bar, the only gay bar in Eugene, which doesn't exist anymore, I've been told. And we go in, it's about 3 o'clock in the morning again, and I could describe the place to you in complete, vivid detail, but that's not really important to the story. What's important to the story is there were about 10, 15 men in there, anywhere from late 20s all the way up into early 50s. And we go in, and I take off my long, flowing mohair coat and hang it on the coat rack, and we're just kind of hanging out. It turns out we're only there so Ryan can score crystal, which, again, for anybody who doesn't know what a 280Z is, they call that meth now. And that's not really pertinent to the story, but what is on that night, I discovered something new. I discovered what it felt like to be viewed as an object of desire. And I'd never felt that before. I had girlfriends and had sex and all that stuff and dated girls from, 16 and a half to 18 at this point. Didn't have a lot of experience, but I knew what it was like to be desired, but not to be viewed that way, for it to be like palpable, to feel it on your body, the way people look at you. And it was amazing. And I didn't care at all that it wasn't a reciprocal kind of thing. I didn't give a shit that I wasn't interested in them. Just to feel wanted like that was intoxicating in a way. So I tell a very abridged version of that to the guy in the 280Zs. He's driving me back to my apartment. In other words, I say, yeah, I know the place and I've been there before. He's like, oh, yeah. Yeah. We were there after hours this one. I was like, oh, what'd you think? I'm like, oh, it was cool. And it's just, the 280Z that we're driving is a stick, right? And he's having to shift gears. And one time, like shortly after we had this little interchange, his hand kind of comes off the stick shift, and instead of just kind of laying on the console, it ends up on my thigh. And I didn't freak out. Again, I felt desired, which was very powerful. And I wasn't attracted to this guy at all. But I was interested in seeing how far that feeling might go. And he goes to shift again, and his hand comes back onto my thigh, but this time it's a few inches farther up. And then it's a few inches farther up. And then it's in my crotch. And he's stroking my cock through the fabric of my very tight white Levi's. And I'm an 18-year-old boy. And I don't find this guy attractive, but my cock doesn't give a shit at this point. So back in those days, I used to kind of wear it off to the side, like riding high on the hip, taking advantage of how tight the pants were. And it's growing out toward my pocket, and he's just rubbing on the damn thing. And I'm not objecting at all, because it feels good. And so we get like right up to where my apartment is, and instead of stopping in front of my apartment, he knows the address. He drives right past it, and we go around the block, and he pulls into this alleyway. He stops the car. He doesn't shut it off. He just stops it, puts it in in neutral. And then he's got my cock out of my pants, and then he's got it in his mouth. Now, my cock had been in other mouths before this night. But I can honestly say that I had never had a blowjob before then. Because what he was doing, and this is a horrible fucking cliche. I mean, he's a man, he knows what to do. But it was fucking amazing. It was like a revelation. I had no idea that getting your dick sucked could feel like that. It was, yeah, no more words about it. And surprisingly enough, at 18, I didn't come. This didn't last a real long time. It was just long enough for all that revelation shit to happen. And he comes up and he looks at me and he's like, do you want to go to my apartment? And I'm like, okay. And so we drive all the way out to his apartment, and his hand is on my cock pretty much the whole way in between shifting back on the cock, shifting back on the cock, right? And so my cock's hard the entire drive out to the South Hills outside of Eugene. And we pull into his condo, into the garage, and I've got to try to stuff this back in my pants so I can get out of the car without my pants falling down. And there's a button fly thing. Like a Levi's commercial, this whole bit. And we go in from the garage into the kitchen and the dining room and kind of come back together, and he's looking up at me, and he's still rubbing on the front of my pants, and he's like this tall, roughly, so he's looking up at me, and I guess it's time to kiss for the first time. So for those of you out there who haven't kissed a man, I'm presuming there are some in here, it's different than kissing a woman. And not just the way you would think because of the mustache and the 5 o'clock shadow kind of around the rest of his mouth, but what I still remember to this day, I mean, I can taste it. There's this, it's a mouth, still like any other mouth, but there's this, and again, I've only kissed the one guy. There's like this weird metallic taste that's also mixed in there, and it's not unpleasant, like burning plastic or anything like that. It's just this strange, like electrolysis kind of, I don't fucking know how to explain it, but it's different. And we're standing there, we kiss for a while, and then we end up going up the stairs to his bedroom, and he's like, we're going to take a shower. He just tells me this, because by this time he's leading me through the experience, and don't really know why I'm doing it, but again, nothing's really bothering me, so fuck, who knows? So we end up in the shower, and I hadn't been washed by another human being since I was a toddler. And this guy washed me to the point where I felt cleaner than I probably ever felt my entire life. So again, mid-'80s, height of the whole scare and all the rest of that shit. So I guess it makes a certain sense, although nothing was ever said about any of that. And anyway, we end up coming out of the shower, we're naked, we end up getting on the bed, and he's going down on me again, and my cock's been pretty much hard for like an hour at this point already. But I'm nowhere near orgasm. It's weird. It's like what he was doing was keeping me excited, but there was no like progression beyond just being excited and it feeling good, which could be a very intense experience, although it felt kind of numb at the same time. And then it's my turn to go down on him. Now, for those of you who have not had a cock in your mouth, it doesn't feel the same in your mouth as it does in your hand. Now, I've only had the one cock in my mouth, so this may have been a superlative experience in that regard, but it was hard, because the cock's hard. It was hard, but it was soft at the same time. Now, I'm assuming a lot of people know what that means, but being 18 and completely inexperienced, well, for the most part anyway, at that point, this was a completely new thing to me, and that's all I could think about, really. And I have no idea if I did a good job or anything. I mean, I know what I like, and again, we're back to the cliche, so I kind of did some of that, but it's not like I gave a shit about how it was. I was thinking about the weirdness of the whole hard-soft thing, and I was also thinking about wanting him to feel comfortable in the situation. That's what was important to me at that point. I didn't want to let him down. And I just met the guy like an hour before. And then he rolls over onto his back, and it's time to do like what at that point anyway I thought gay sex was. I fuck him in the ass for a while, and he ends up coming on his belly, big hairy belly, and that was because I was relatively hairless at this point, so cum in body hair was like a new visual thing, and that was striking in and of itself. I mean, I've seen it plenty now on my own body, but. And so he's come at this point, right? So it's like I'm feeling relieved because I did my duty, and he was comfortable, and he came, and it's time to go home. But he's not interested in me going home at this point. What it seems like he's interested in, I mean, to the point that he told me this is what he was interested in, is making sure that I have an orgasm. Now, again, my cock's been 18-year-old hard this whole fucking time, but I'm not feeling any progression toward anything, right? So he goes down on me again, and again, that feels absolutely amazing, but it doesn't move me any closer to getting off. And then he comes up off my cock and goes for the balls, and nobody had, the 16-year-old girls back in Corvallis had never sucked on my balls. So that was cool. And then he grabs the bottom of my thighs and pushes them up. And he's holding them there, and he goes down lower. Now, for those of you out there who've never had someone's tongue on your asshole before, it's fucking amazing. At least I like it, anyway. Not really for everybody, I presume. So that lasted for a while, and then he's going down on me again, and he's still holding my legs up this whole time, and then I feel the head of his cock, at least I'm presuming it's that, because again, hard and not quite hard at the same time, brushing against my ass. And finally, in that moment, I had this, it wasn't fear, it wasn't revulsion. I could tell you a lot of things it wasn't. I can't tell you what it was. But I finally said, we're not doing that. I'm still curious about what that might feel like. So then he rolls over on his back, and again, he's like auditioning, I guess, on behalf of gay men everywhere for me, because it's really important to him that I get off. It seems like, and at this point, the dawn's starting to break, lights filtering through the curtains. We've been doing this for 3.5 hours, 4 hours, I don't fucking know, but I roll him up, he's on his back, and I'm basically fucking him in the mouth, as if his mouth is a vagina. And I'm thinking about this girl, Jules, who demanded that I feel her tits because they were so firm at one point, but she never had sex with me. But I'm thinking about her, and I finally, with my eyes closed, thinking really hard about Jules and fucking this guy in the mouth, I finally come. Hooray. So we put our clothes back on. I guess he wasn't interested in washing me again afterwards, but we get in the 280Z, we drive back across Eugene, rush hour's kind of starting to happen. We pull up in front of my apartment, and I know for a fact that my roommate is a carpet layer and that he gets up very early in the morning. And so I know he's in there, and he may very well be looking out the window. And the guy I've been with for several hours at this point, whose mouth I had just come in, leans over to kiss me, and again, that's the second time, and I don't know why, but it's probably just because I didn't want anybody to see. I balked again, and so he pulls this business card out of his shirt pocket, the shirt he'd been wearing when he picked me up off the side of the road, and he hands it to me, and there's his name and phone number, the name of his business, travel agent, and there's this beautiful picture of this parrot. And I have no idea what that means. I got out of the car, I never called the guy, I never saw him again. Never went back to the gay bar in Eugene. I've been to several since. It's not really important. I think looking back on it, what's important is what it meant. What I did, what I chose not to do, what I was thinking. But I honestly can't tell you what any of it means. What I can tell you is that it feels really good to be desired, to have somebody want you. At least it feels good for me. and it feels really good when somebody licks my asshole.